Governments around the world frequently present themselves as models of transparency and accountability. They craft narratives that emphasize their commitment to democratic values, economic stability, and the protection of national security. Yet behind this carefully curated facade lies a web of concealed practices, manipulations, and decisions that often escape the public eye. These hidden actions, many of which come to light only through whistleblowers, investigative journalists, or leaks, reveal the intricate ways in which governments manage power, control information, and protect their interests, often at the expense of the people they serve. One of the most widespread and insidious practices is the manipulation of economic data. Governments understand that numbers, whether it's gross domestic product growth, unemployment rates, or inflation figures, serve as powerful symbols of a nation's prosperity or decline. By altering the way these figures are calculated or presented, authorities can paint a far rosier picture of the economy than reality would suggest. This artificial optimism helps maintain public trust, boosts investor confidence, and strengthens political stability, allowing governments to avoid uncomfortable reforms or the scrutiny that would otherwise follow from economic downturns. A striking example of this occurred in Greece in the early 2000s. Eager to meet the strict financial criteria required for Eurozone membership, the Greek government deliberately underreported its national debt and fiscal deficits. For years, it maintained a veneer of economic stability, while hiding the severe structural problems lurking beneath. When the truth was finally exposed in 2009, the illusion crumbled, triggering a financial crisis that would engulf the nation in years of austerity, mass unemployment, and deep societal hardship. The delayed reckoning worsened the impact, as reforms that could have mitigated the crisis were avoided until it was too late. War, with its colossal human and financial toll, is another area where governments often obscure the full picture from the public. In times of conflict, citizens are rallied around national security narratives, and governments highlight patriotism while conveniently sidestepping the long-term repercussions of military engagements. Yet behind this patriotic rhetoric, wars often become profitable ventures for defense contractors and private companies, which benefit from prolonged conflict. The financial incentives to keep wars going for as long as possible rarely align with the public's interest in peace or the well-being of soldiers and civilians caught in the crossfire. A prominent example is the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. The war was justified under the false pretense that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, a claim that was widely debunked after no such weapons were found. However, by that point, the war had escalated into a long-term conflict that would stretch for years, costing over $2 trillion. What was initially presented as a necessary swift military intervention spiraled into a drawn-out war that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands and left a trail of destruction in its wake. Meanwhile, private military contractors like Halliburton made billions in profits, revealing the stark contrast between the government's public rationale for the war and the underlying financial interests at play. Surveillance of citizens is another area where governments often overstep, hiding the full extent of their monitoring behind claims of national security. Mass surveillance programs framed as necessary measures to combat terrorism or crime often operate far beyond the boundaries of what the public is aware of or has consented to. Citizens may believe that their privacy is being protected, but in reality, governments collect vast amounts of personal data, often without any clear oversight. The Snowden revelations of 2013 brought this issue to the forefront. Edward Snowden, a former contractor for the US National Security Agency, exposed a vast global surveillance apparatus that monitored not only foreign threats but also the communications of millions of US citizens. Programs like PRISM, which allowed the NSA to collect emails, phone records, and internet activity, were operating on a massive scale, far beyond what the government had publicly admitted. The revelations sparked a global debate on privacy, freedom, and the role of government in a digital age, challenging the assumption that surveillance was limited to national security threats. Corporate influence over government policy is another covert aspect of governance that often escapes public scrutiny. In many democracies, corporations wield immense power through lobbying, campaign donations, and personal connections with policymakers. This influence allows them to shape regulations, secure favorable tax policies, and block attempts at reform that might curb their profits. While governments may claim to act in the public interest, corporate influence often ensures that the priorities of big business come first. In the United States, the influence of the health insurance industry during the drafting of the Affordable Care Act, or ACA, offers a revealing example. The insurance companies, determined to protect their profits, lobbied fiercely against the inclusion of a public option, a government-run insurance plan that could have offered more affordable health care to millions of Americans. Their efforts were successful. The public option was excluded from the final version of the ACA, ensuring the continued dominance of private insurers in the healthcare market. The result has been a system that leaves many Americans with high premiums and limited access to affordable care, all while enriching the insurance companies that helped shape the policy. Debt is another area where governments often obscure the truth. National debt can accumulate quietly over years, as governments issue bonds and other financial instruments to cover deficits without addressing the underlying fiscal problems. This allows them to delay hard choices, but at the cost of saddling future generations with financial burdens that can eventually lead to economic collapse. A sobering example is the financial collapse of Puerto Rico. For years, the island's government downplayed its mounting debt, issuing bonds to cover budget shortfalls and insisting that the situation was under control. However, in 2015, Puerto Rico defaulted on its debt, revealing the full extent of its financial problems. The crisis led to severe austerity measures, deep cuts to public services, and widespread economic hardship for Puerto Rican citizens. It serves as a cautionary tale of how governments can hide the full scope of public debt until it's too late to prevent disaster. Another tactic governments employ to maintain control is the use of media to shape public opinion. By exerting influence over news outlets, either through direct ownership or by fostering close relationships with media corporations, governments can control the narrative, suppress dissenting voices, and promote their political agendas. This control is particularly evident in authoritarian regimes where media serves as a tool for propaganda. Russia offers a striking example of media manipulation under President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin exerts tight control over the country's media landscape, using state-owned outlets like RT, formerly Russia Today, to promote pro-government narratives and downplay criticism. During the annexation of Crimea in 2014, Russian media framed the event as a peaceful reunification with Russia, glossing over the violence and the widespread international condemnation that followed. This case highlights how control over the media allows governments to shape both national and international perceptions to their advantage. Understanding these hidden practices is crucial for citizens who wish to hold their governments accountable. By shining a light on these tactics, we can demand greater transparency and fairness, ensuring that governments truly serve the interests of the people rather than their own agendas. The fight for accountability and integrity in governance is ongoing, but by staying informed, we can work towards a world where governments are held to the standards they claim to uphold.